Welcome to HNB Conversations on this very cold winter morning somewhere in the United States of America in order to have conversations with Cosmo and Rivka.
Yes, welcome.
Welcome, welcome.
Yeah,
It is cold and it is rainy.
Yes, which is delightful.
Unless you have creaky bones, then it's not delightful.
Yeah, Riv, last night, she...
I did nothing. I did absolutely nothing. I bent down to pick up a card. I was playing Clue with my kids, and I dropped a card on the floor because I'm the worst Clue player ever.
Well, you don't play it enough.
Thanks. But I'm the worst. I mean, yeah, thanks for that. I'm the worst Clue player ever. And so, because I think someone who's never played it before and knows the rules could have played better than I did. The problem is I didn't know how to play, and I was just like in it to play.
Right. So that's what I meant by, I was actually trying to compliment you, see? Because it's not that you're the worst Clue player ever. You're just inexperienced at playing it, and therefore you might be an excellent Clue player.
Okay. Anyways.
And while that was happening,
I dropped a card on the floor, and I leaned down. I kept one arm on the table and leaned all the way down under the table to pick up, and I was like stretching and picking up. By the time I got back up to play the game, I was like, my shoulder feels weird. And as the night progressed, my shoulder hurts tremendously.
yeah, I think she pinched a nerve or something like that.
Yeah, or broke it. I don't know.
So anyway, well, welcome everybody, and Rivka's gonna
I'm going to say, where is the bathroom? But I'm going to say it in Greek.
Okay,
because I don't think we've done Greek yet.
right.
So there are lots of ways to say where's the bathroom. Everything that I've looked up how to say where's the bathroom is not how I learned how to say where's the bathroom.
Can you please just say how you can say what they say you're supposed to say? But as a Greek speaker,
I'm not a professional Greek speaker.
You are a professional Greek speaker.
I'm just a child.
You've been speaking it since as long as you can remember. Your mother spoke it to you as a baby.
Yeah.
And so you grew up speaking whatever the dialect is from your area of Greece. How would you say, where's the bathroom there?
I would say, and it could be how children say it, I don't know, but I would say, Buine to cabine.
Okay, so maybe you go, where's the potty?
Yeah, that's right. That's what it could. That's what it absolutely could
Perhaps.
be. Which is why I wasn't like totally on board with telling everybody how
okay.
I say, where is the bathroom?
Say it again.
Buine to cabine.
So that way, if you go to Greece and you say, Puino ta cabina.
No, that's not how I said it. It's not Buine to cabina. That's not how I said it. I
All
said
right.
Buine
Puine
to cabine.
to cabine. That sounds very not babyish.
Okay. Anyways. So
She just said that with authority. Did you hear that? Say it again.
Buine
Puine
to cabine.
to cabine.
There you go. You got it right that time.
There we go. How do you
Okay,
do?
but according to Google, who is of course all wise and all knowing
And not Greek.
and not Greek, but I think there are bigger Greek speakers that are contributing to Google. I am not one of them. No one's knocking on my door asking me to help out with Google. Anyways, it is now it's hard for me to say. I don't know why, but it's puine y toaleta.
Yeah, that sounds like toilet.
Right, yeah. Puine y toaleta.
All right.
But they say
there
it
you
super,
go.
super fast. So then I have I wanted to say something because I found some really interesting information. So I wanted to mention this. Okay, so it says in the first millennium BC, ancient Greeks of the classical period, and especially the succeeding Hellenistic period, developed large-scale public latrines. Basically, large rooms with bench seats connected to drainage systems and put toilets into ordinary middle-class houses. And then, when they weren't busy writing epic poetry, because every Greek is an epic poet writer,
Correct.
ancient Greeks washed daily with wash basins, foot baths, and even small bathtubs. Large baths, which were sometimes communal, were used as long ago as 2000 BC, especially in palaces, estates, and larger homes.
Wow.
So, when like the English just a few hundred years ago, or the French were like, we don't bathe. Why would we bathe? You know, Greeks, we were nice and clean and sticking up our nose at the world going, my goodness, you stink, people.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Yeah,
so you're welcome, the world,
Well, I
for
think-
plumbing and bathing.
Yes.
We just knew long before you should bathe, okay? You stink.
I think the Greeks get their I think people acknowledge that the Greeks have laid a foundation of civilization.
Yes, I do. I think that's really important to acknowledge, especially this time of year when Hanukkah is upon us. And the Greek can often be displayed and presented as the bad guy.
I'll tell a tale.
Yeah.
Tale.
And I every year we go through this, and it's not just like, you know, like I mean, it's
when the Greeks tried
it's
to
the
sail,
Greeks
sail.
were doing this, and the Greeks, and I'm always like the one Greek person in the room, and I'm proud to be Greek, but I always feel like, okay, fine, I'm sorry again.
Yeah, I wonder if that's how Egyptians feel at Passover.
You know what? I think they probably do. I think
Like
they
Egyptian
probably do.
believers or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like,
You have my sympathy. You have my sympathies. Yes.
feels yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well,
All right.
do we have a spinner wheel question, Antonio?
Let me spin. All right.
We'll allow it.
I'd love for him to one time get up and just start spinning in a circle.
Yeah.
That'd be so fun to watch.
Pirouette.
All right. The question is, what is your favorite useless fact? Wait, yeah.
What is my favorite useless fact?
What is your favorite useless fact?
I'll let you take this one, Cosmo.
I actually, I don't know. That's such a broad question, because I mean, for instance, I could talk about
Anything.
I
Right?
could talk about sports, which is all useless. It's just pure entertainment. There's nothing.
I don't know that everybody would agree that sports are useless.
No, but in terms of professional sport, it's entertainment. I mean, I could talk about all the statistics. I could talk about Dan Marino being.
I don't think that's useless, though.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, no, it's not useless in this regard, right? Like the other day, I mean, whenever I wear my Miami Dolphins garb, which is often, when I'm in stores, almost, I mean, people will stop me and talk to me about the Dolphins. And in fact, it was so cute. The night before Thanksgiving, Cassianike and I had to go to, or Cassiani, she doesn't want other people calling her Cassianike. Cassiani and I had to go to go to the store to pick up some things. And this little boy, he's like, he was 9 years old, was in a Miami Dolphins shirt. And I didn't see him. And he walked by and he saw me. And so he actually came up to me and was like, he goes, did you see the game? Did you see the game that they had against the Raiders? And which was just like a couple of days earlier, but he said it in a way that made it sound like a long time ago. And he was so cute. And I was like, yeah, I did see it, and we had
You're like, why didn't any of my
None of my-
sons, none of my sons even give a rip about football?
they'll endure it for me. They enjoy the Super Bowl, but that's a casual.
They're just not
Yeah,
interested.
it's not the thing. But anyway, this little 9-year-old kid, it was so cute, and so we talked football, and I have that kind of thing happen all the time. So that you're right in that regard, that it's a
Well, I think we need
an
to
icebreaker.
I think we need to decide what is a useless fact. Is a useless fact something that is like nobody cares about?
Well, no, I don't think. I think the whole idea, it's like trivia. It's
Trivia is not full of useless facts.
Well, the reason we call it trivia,
Yes.
right? The word trivial means unimportant. Trivial means it's insignificant.
So you mean to tell me that all of those questions about Disney are unimportant? I don't think they're unimportant.
Well, the historical portions, for instance.
Yeah, that's not trivial.
But it's still called trivia.
Right, because that's a game. But what I'm talking about is like what consists, or what's the word I'm looking for?
What defines
a useless fact? Something that nobody would use?
Well, to the degree.
I mean,
when you reduce it to nobody, then there will be no fact that's truly useless. So because some people
Let's try and find one. Let's
that-
try and find
because, hold
one.
on, because for some people, their job is in that arena, that this is useful information for them to have. But for people at large, like, okay, so for instance, I'm helping the girls with math the other day. And that-
Useless facts.
Listen,
completely.
I love math. I always have enjoyed math. But there are things that my daughters are having to do in the higher forms, or Cassini's having to do in the higher forms of algebra, that I look at and I go, and I jokingly said, well, I have to use this every day. Because, I mean, I haven't had to mess with some of that stuff since I was in school.
Mm-hmm.
But so for me,
Those are useless
it's
facts.
useless. Now, geometry is not useless for me, right? Because I can use it when I'm building something or putting. Or
I think everybody should learn geometry
right,
and
the
just
measurement, learning
ditch
how to
algebra.
deal with angles, and when I'm
Yeah.
cutting things to put up.
I think chemistry is good. I think geometry is good. I'm not quite sure unless you're going to be a scientist, right? Because is that what you use algebra for? What do you use algebra for?
Well, basic algebra you use for everything.
Oh, for everything.
Basic algebra is reasoning.
Oh,
It's helping
okay.
you find the myths. Like I have.
I'm not disagreeing with the fact that math isn't essential. I can't do math, so I'm just always figuring things out in other ways,
Right.
and I wish so much I could do math.
The whole idea around algebra, or when you're working with certain equations and you're trying to find the value of variables, is it really does equate into a reasoning in real life where you go, okay, I have this number, I have this fact, but I'm missing this. And when I look at all that together, how can I figure out based on everything else?
I know a useless fact.
Okay.
This is a useless fact.
Huh.
I mean, people might find it enjoyable, like, but it is a useless fact.
That's the
But it is a
definition.
fact nonetheless.
Okay.
When I talk, if you're looking at me from the side view of my face, the tip of my nose bounces up and down. That's a fact. Anybody can watch.
What?
When I talk and you're looking at the side of my face, the tip of my nose bounces up and down. That's a useless fact.
Is that what's happening to my nose?
No.
Because it wasn't happening to your nose just now. You turned your
Yeah.
face.
When I talk,
Wait,
the
are
tip
you
of
looking?
my nose.
Are you looking at the tip of your nose?
See, look. How could I look at the tip of my
Correct.
nose? Is
I'm
there
looking-
a mirror in here?
No, correct. So I'm looking
Right.
at the tip of your nose, and
Right.
and fact,
People have
it's not
told me
bouncing.
this.
They
People
lied.
have told me they lied to me.
Well, maybe it did then. It doesn't anymore. It didn't today. It didn't
well, that's
just
how
now.
useless it was. wasn't even accurate.
I don't think that that's kind of what.
So
the
that's not a
question was-
fact. That's not a fact because it's not a fact because it's not true. All right, come up with something else, Rev. Come on, come up with something else. Let's see. Useless facts. Golly, there's so many
Crossword
things.
puzzles are filled with useless facts. Like
But you have to know them, right? Because you have to
Yeah.
be able to answer them.
Right. So they're not useless for people who write crossword puzzles.
Yeah, I guess. There are people that really enjoy doing crossword puzzles.
Yeah, I do the New York Times mini every day.
You do?
I do.
That's a useless fact.
Yeah. we
There
actually
you go.
We actually compete. You know.
Yeah, I do it every
He
day.
does
You
it.
guys
Antonio does it too.
compete?
We compete. How fast you can do it.
Yeah,
it,
so does
it
Giovanni,
actually keeps
and
track of
I
how
think-
fast.
Wait,
you
is
can.
that Wordle?
No, Wordle's different.
It's a different
but
New
it's
York
all
Times
within. It's a different New York Times thing. I don't do that. But if you look at the New York Times major crossword, it's full of so much nothing
You'll learn though. They're fun.
that you learn. Yeah, I mean, I'm just
fun.
like how.
Yeah.
So it
I
couldn't
actually
be
just finished
useless
doing the New
nothing
York
if
Times
you're
mini.
learning.
Correct, but but lots of stuff that we learn, someone would say is a useless fact, but nothing's useless to everyone. It's
I want to
useful
find
to
that
someone.
thing. I want to find that thing that would be useless to everyone.
Girl.
I want to find that thing.
I think a useless fact to everybody would have to be a useless fact about yourself.
right.
It would be something about you that has no value to anybody, not even yourself.
Yeah. I mean, when I think of on a spiritual level, when I think of useless facts, and they're not necessarily useless, but there's this stuff where these passages where Paul tells Timothy, watch out for the people who want to get bogged down in talking about all of this stuff. They want to talk about, the genealogies and this and that to the degree and they're missing the point of walking out the practicality of love and faithfulness. They get kind of bogged down in the minutia of and to me that it's not that those things are necessarily useless facts, but they're distracting facts. People get off on tangents.
Well, I think that yes, tangents. Absolutely.
This whole thing is a tangent.
This whole thing.
This
is all a tangent.
We're just filling air and wasting
of
your
useless facts.
time.
Like they're like, who? Well, I'm not going to Greece. Why do I care about how do you go to the bathroom? Not how do you go to the
I don't think anyone's asking.
Not how do you go to the bathroom, where you or no,
But
never
see,
mind.
For instance,
Never mind.
There's someone who could say, for instance, they say, hey, the thing that you told us about the Greeks inventing, public,
Yes.
baths and all this, that's a useless fact, but it's not a useless fact.
That's absolute. That's history. That's not a useless fact.
Right. History.
That's essential to civilization.
Right, because if we don't learn from history, we're bound to
Repeat it.
or not repeat what needs to be repeated and
Right.
repeat what shouldn't be repeated.
I mean, can you imagine, like, if we lost, because we're so online, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we lost all the ability for computers and just everything, and if everything just turned off,
Right.
okay, which is why I still have so many of my books that explain so many things. But if you had like none of that information, we would basically be starting over and not only not knowing how to do so many things, but you go forward 1 or 2 generations and they've forgotten and they don't know how to do anything. It's like we jump back 2,000 years.
Well, we're building on something that someone didn't understand or didn't know how to do was finally discovered, finally invented or something like that. And then people began to start from that. They didn't have to understand it. They just started from there and began to build on that. And so, yeah, if you take out the foundation...
Useless fact.
Huh.
I got one. I mean, it's a fact, but I don't think it matters. I was just talking about this with Mandy, and we were just talking about the fact that around in the 1930s and 40s, half of America still didn't have electricity. Isn't that crazy? But it's a useless fact. Like, it doesn't matter today, other than it's like a historical thing. It doesn't actually matter anymore because that was then, and it was just a fact then. But it's pretty useless now.
But it's not
But
useless.
that was I mean, because it triggered my mind because of what you were saying about what we build on and how such a short time ago we really didn't have a lot.
Right.
And I mean, well, gosh, I guess it's almost 100 years ago now.
Yeah, but again, I would say that in large part, understanding history and understanding even the how much things have changed in such a relatively short period of time. Centuries would go by with very little change in, what a useless fact could be talking about the styles, clothing styles.
Yeah.
That's all baloney. I mean, it's interesting.
It's interesting. I
but
love
it's-
fashion in that regard.
It's fashion,
but it's not.
It's superfluous. It doesn't really.
So I
matter.
guess the question would be: are there any true useless facts?
Right.
And I don't know that there are any true
It just
useless
depends
facts.
on the person, because if fashion is your job, then understanding the trends and the history of fashion is not useless, and you're serving a purpose, and so it's not useless to you. So
What if it's a useless fact like this is how I, in particularly, like my coffee?
but see,
But that's a useless fact to everybody.
But it's not a useless fact.
It's not useless.
It's
to
not
you.
useless, because the more I would understand the useless things, it would be useful for me, right?
Yes.
And so understand it's all relative. What's usefulness and uselessness is relative to the impact of our understanding of what it can have on our
I'm
lives.
always so impressed how we can take something so small, like, and just we can just talk about it and just talk about it. Like, I'm impressed. It was a very small question.
Well, but I mean, philosophically speaking, the whole question it does bring us back to the question of what is useless, and there are things that are useless to me that are not useless to you.
So much, yeah.
and vice versa. Stuff about dancing is useless to me. It's not useless to my daughter.
I think it could be a little more useful to you. I think you could try just a little bit, but okay.
And all of the sports facts that if I begin talking to you
Yes.
and about sports, you will try, but you will glaze over.
Do you know why I'll glaze over?
Why?
Because I don't understand numbers.
Okay.
No, because seriously, because if you start to understand something, then you can develop an appreciation for it, and you can then, when you're watching the game, you can see what's going on, and so you then begin to understand and like it. But for me, because I one of my learning disabilities is I cannot do numbers for whatever reason. So I cannot, like, you're talking to me about something and it has to do with numbers and statistics and all of that. And all I hear, it's like I'm in a Peanuts episode in the classroom and I hear it wah, 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 wah,
Oh, no, I get it. There are a lot of things I struggle to file away, right? I don't know. It's like information hitting me and I don't have file folders for it mentally. Like, I get it, but I'm like, how do I don't have a categorization place to put
So
it.
you have learning disabilities.
I do.
Yes, we should label, like, what kind of a learning disability would that be?
What?
Because I think that would benefit so many people.
Yeah.
If you could label that learning disability and then be like, I'm sorry, I was unable to remember this fact. I was unable to remember our anniversary. Honestly, I can't remember anniversaries and birth dates and all of that because I have
Numbers.
that number.
Dates are...
So maybe that's what happens to guys who don't remember things.
I remember dates super well.
Yeah.
Generally speaking. But what I struggle with, like, okay, so for instance, Rivka will talk about, like, she can walk into a house that's dilapidated and she can, like, and she can go in and she can visualize.
I see it all in my head.
Right? That's what visualize means. She can...
Thank you.
Sorry. It just felt like...
I'm just saying. I'm complimenting you. I'm actually agreeing with you. I'm telling you that, yes, I can see it all in my head.
Like you just echoed me with the synonym, Anyway, she can visualize.
You're welcome.
She can see it all in her head, what the room should look like. And so she'll have idea, okay, here's what we're going to do. And she'll say it very fast. For me, it's fast. Because as she's speaking...
For other people, it's just the simple English language. But yes.
But I have to mentally try to place what you're saying.
Because you can't visualize.
Because I can't visualize the way you do. No, I don't. And so I'm very concrete. So I'm like, no, there's a wall there. Can't move that wall.
I agree with that. You're very concrete.
Yeah. Hard-headed. And so in Italian, the capodost is a hard head. And so that's where you'll talk about things like you'll go, and then like maybe a couple days later you'll say, no, actually here's what we want to do, and you'll change it, and I'm all mixed in my mind. I'm like, okay, wait, and I can't keep track because I haven't fully visualized it, and I'll lose those. I mean, it's happened many times, and so it's my own.
We have our giftings.
Yeah, we do.
Yep.
So
okay.
So
well,
anyway.
I think I guess that
It lasted way longer than
no such thing as an actual useless fact.
I think that's the fact that we've come up with.
What's useless to one is not necessarily useless to another. It's all relative.
Okay,
One
next
man's
question.
trash is another man's treasure is basically what you're saying.
In one, to some degree, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's very. There you go. There you go. Yeah. All right, next question.
Here, I'll spin. And
Spin.
all right. If you had your own talk show, who would be your first guest?
We do have our own talk show.
I keep wanting to
Now,
have
this
guests
is a
on.
podcast if you had a talk show.
A talk show. So basically, a talk show is when you have guests on.
We would have guests.
Yeah, I would love to have guests on.
Yeah.
I think it would be
So
fun.
If you could pick any guest.
If I could pick any guest, do they have to be alive?
No.
Yeah, I think so. I think
No, it's just who. So like
I would think to have a talk show. I mean, I think it's in the
hypothetical, like the guest. If you could have anybody on, who would it be?
Yeah, but once you open up to all of history, Jesus, I mean,
Okay, you can limit yourself there. Sure, go for it.
I mean, so,
It's
but if I could have
up
any
to
guest,
you.
The first person I think is Socrates, but I think if he were here, he'd just be
The
angry.
first person
all
you
over.
think of is Socrates.
she's
Yeah.
all Greek focused right now.
No, for real. He
Like
was.
I asked what you went Socrates. That was your
Well, yeah,
immediate
but I think
go-to?
if he were here, he'd be very disappointed in the future. But anyways,
Yeah.
so and I don't think we need to.
Keanu Reeves calls him Socrates
What?
in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Oh, that's not Keanu Reeves. That's Bill.
Yeah, I know.
Or
but he's
Ted,
Keanu
whichever
Reeves.
one he is.
Socrates. Socrates. Anyway,
Okay. So who would you
flashback.
have as a guest? They have to now when you have a guest on a show, they have to be like a good guest. So they have to be able to engage but not take over.
Possibly play a game.
Yeah.
Be a good sport, enjoy themselves, laugh a lot. You know, you've seen talk shows.
Yeah.
The worst guests are when they just answer your questions with like 1 or 2 word answers, and then there's just this
You know,
cricket silence, and you're
I
like,
think of when
okay.
I remember actually going on dates when I was young and trying
Well,
to
I'm glad it was when you were young.
of course when I was because we were young and we got married,
Yeah.
trying to start conversation and I'd ask some sort of leading question and I thought it was a leading question and I'd get like yes, no.
Yeah, I've never been on a date like that. I've been on dates where there's like other really worse stuff that happened. Like I went on this is a tangent, but I went on this date with this one guy and I was seriously just bored and I had nothing to do and I was tired of being home all the time. And he was a decent looking guy and he asked me to go out. So we were going out a few times here and there, everything like that. It was fine. But he kept like, he'd be like, hey, can you spot me for this? Or, hey, can you spot me for that? And I was like, okay. Well, one time he tells me, I want to take you out to a really, really nice dinner. And I'm like, okay, all right. You know, no, he did not just take me to Arby's. And we went to this really nice restaurant. Which restaurant? I do not know the name of it. Nothing. I do not remember. But we sat down.
Arby's?
No, it could not have been Arby's.
You don't know though.
Is this your talk show? Anyway.
It wouldn't be Antonio.
It would not be Antonio. So anyway, so we went out and we sat there for dinner and he says to me, we were seated and he says to me, oh man, he's like, hey, I totally forgot my wallet. He's like, can you spot me for dinner? And I know that at this point, like he's hardly paid me back any of the money, right? And I'm like, okay. And so we're sitting there and we open our menus and we're looking at this and he says to me, hey, order anything you want. It's all on me. I remember thinking to myself, no, it's actually all on me. So I'm going to get whatever I want. I'm paying for it.
Right. No, So I remember conversationalists that were not conversationalists. So obviously you want someone that can hold a conversation because for instance, like in the sports world, because to me, if I had a talk show, what kind of show is it? Is it a just talking about like a variety show? So say I had a sports guest on where there are some sports figures that I really admire the way they play, but when I've heard them give interviews, I'm like, I wouldn't have them on the show. So I like someone who can hold a conversation, who can be entertaining. Like I listen. Sometimes I'll listen to sports.
I think
show.
you would be a good guest, but I don't think you'd be a good host because I think you're better at answering questions than asking them. And I think I ask a lot of questions.
I agree with that entirely.
Yeah.
You watch Jimmy Fallon, he's an excellent host, right? Because whoever he's talking to, he's fully, like he's interested in them and asking questions about what they're doing. So I listen to this Rich Eisen, he's a sports guy, and he has all kinds of guests on there. And so like when he had Josh Gad on his sports show, which by the way, Josh Gad, who plays Olaf on Frozen 2, turns out is a huge on Frozen and Frozen 2. I don't know why I said Frozen 2. He's a huge Miami Dolphins fan.
Really?
Yeah, that is a useless fact.
So he's
to
one of
some
your people.
He is one of my people. He's a Jewish kid from South Florida that is a huge Miami Dolphins fan, and But I'm not from South Florida. I'm from Central Florida. But
Well,
anyway,
what are you gonna do?
useless fact.
Mm.
Who would I have?
You could have just said Florida.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
No,
You
no.
could say just Florida.
Not so for the rest of the country you could have, but for the state of Florida,
You can say
yeah.
Florida, but if you're talking to like someone from Arkansas,
Yeah.
like they
you
don't
can just
care.
say I'm from.
Or
I'm from Central Florida, or I'm from Florida.
Or if he's talking to me,
yeah.
because he is talking to me and I don't care. That's a useless fact for me.
Exactly.
Florida in general works.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So you may continue.
I don't know. I'm trying to think because to me it just depends on what area. There are actors that I'd love to talk to, sports figures I'd love to talk to, ministers I'd love to talk to. Someone that's old that's about to die that I'd love to hear their thoughts. That would be the question. Someone who could give us insight. I would say Henry Kissinger, but he died this week, so that was terrible. I'm not joking about that, but he lived to be 100, so I think.
Yeah, I think he lived okay.
Yeah, he did all right.
Yeah. I hear that do 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 in my head.
Yeah.
I know. I already know who I would pick.
Well, then, if you say something, I can launch off of that because I'm
Okay, but you
not
can't
being
copy me.
decisive.
You can't copy me.
I won't copy you.
Okay, no copying. I would want to talk to my great grandfather. There's so much about his life that really fascinates me, and there's so much about him we don't know because like the courthouse that had like family history and stuff in it, who was born where, what, burnt down, and he lived, he was born in 18 something and he died I think in the 80s. And I think that he would be someone that I would love to really hear his mind, because he was one person before he got saved, and like getting saved completely changed his temperament, his personality, like everything, and the trajectory of his life. And so I would just be, he's like one of the original like Pentecost people.
Right.
And so I would be really fascinated to like just sit and just ask him so many questions about, not just about like his faith and why and where and when, but also his family history. And, he's from Quebec, Canada. His first language was French. And I don't know. I just think it would be really fascinating to talk to him.
So we're not limiting this to people who are currently alive.
I didn't think so. It doesn't have to go back thousands of years.
So for instance,
like don't pick a Spartan. I
Yeah.
think that you could
like
just
for
get
instance,
yourself in a
now,
mess of
the
trouble.
person that comes to my mind that just recently passed away in the last year is one of my heroes, and that would be Jack Hayford. He's someone that the reason I'd love, first of all, to just interview him. I love to hear him preach, but there's an authenticity when he talks, when he shares. He doesn't give pat religious answers. He's got this real theological depth of understanding, but he balances that with kind of the real human experience that marries the two things together, so that when he talks, there's a relatable nature to it. I remember driving in the car when I was 17, and I turn on like the Christian radio station, and if there was someone preaching on it, I wouldn't normally listen, except I'd listen to him. I would listen to him. He wasn't screaming at me, and there was a depth. There was just a depth of understanding, but it wasn't just rote intellectual knowledge. And so for me to ask him questions, I would, that's someone that I would have.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean that, whether or not, the question of who my audience is, who would tune in, but yeah, I would love to.
But we're not doing this for the sake of the audience. We're
Right.
doing this for like, who would you have
Right.
on? Because
Well,
I don't know that anybody cares about my great grandfather.
Right.
But I do. So.
Well, I would love to. Yeah. One of the things one of the things I learned that I experienced when you and I first got married, we had been married less than a year, and we went on a trip where we drove to Connecticut, and and Rivka met my grandmother for the first time and met family members. And on that trip, actually, not just they were talking to my grandma, but then later we were in Amish country in Ohio, and some friends of mine that I've known, Mennonite friends that I've known since I was 6 years old when they lived in Sarasota, they on that trip, I learned more about them, my own grandmother, things that I had not learned my whole life because Rivka's the talk show host that asked all these really good questions, and I had never stopped. My immediate family, if my sister's listening, she could confirm this. The four of us were not question askers; we were interrupters. We all just kind of spoke over each other and talked. And
well, I'm actually interested, and this isn't anything about anybody else. This is just a me thing. I'm very interested in understanding. So when someone begins to talk, it actually leads me to other questions. Not everybody likes to be asked questions. People can feel like it's invasive, or they can feel judged by questions. And that's not ever my intent. My intent is to understand, wow, like, why did you do that? Or why did you make those choices? And how did you feel about that? Or, where did you come from? I mean, it turned out your friends that you'd known since you were 6 years old. I mean, he was
from an
he was Amish.
I always knew him as a Mennonite, right? And I mean, and
turns out, but he wasn't a Mennonite.
He grew up in
like
a
strict Amish, right? Which I find, like, I was like, oh my gosh. So that led to like a whole bunch of more
ostracized,
questions.
because his parents found him listening to a radio.
Yeah.
And they shunned him.
I was there too.
You asked the question.
Yes. And so, anyways, those things
I'm sharing it with them.
Oh, okay. So, so I find those kinds of things fascinating. I find just the way people are. I love history. I love those things. So those are one of the reasons. And talking to your grandmother, I mean, she's someone who, she literally came across from Italy on the boat through Ellis Island. So that's incredible to me. So being able to sit down with someone like that, it's like sitting down with living history.
Right. To go back. So I think, one of the things I would love to do is I would love to go back and ask more questions of the people. So for instance, you asked my grandma, so Grandma, tell me how you got saved. Right. I didn't ask her how she got saved. I just knew she always was. So, you know what I mean? She was a pillar in my life that I couldn't imagine her having ever been anything but saved, even though I knew otherwise. And so you asking that question opened up a whole other...
Yeah, that's how you learned the story then.
That's how I learned that story,
That's how you learned that story. You're
about
welcome.
my great-grandfather.
You're welcome.
And it was...
Where would you be without me?
I would be blind. And so, there's
Yes,
so I think honestly, just anybody that's going to be that.
But I think honestly, if you sat down with like Willie Mays or Joe Girardi, I think these are people that you would have so many questions for.
Yeah, I actually just watched a documentary on Prime about one of my favorite running backs, Barry Sanders. And it's a great documentary. And it's hard to even describe. I've tried to describe to my kids, like, he's not a Miami Dolphin, but what an incredible, to watch him run was like. And this video, but like asking him questions it was pretty cool hearing this documentary, hearing his perspective on things. And so there are I think, I would love to have conversations. I'd love to hear that's why we read sometimes biographies, right? I mean, we read the biographies so we can hear the stories.
I watch the biographies. I like the pictures. I do.
Sorry.
I like the video clips and everything. I mean, I do read them as well, but that's a lot of books to have. And I could watch documentary after documentary after documentary. I watch documentaries about everything. Right now I'm watching food documentaries. There's a fabulous... they're not long, but it's a fabulous It's called Cooking with History, I think it's called on YouTube.
Yeah.
And he cooks the food and tastes the food while he tells you the history of the food,
Right.
which I think is really cool and fascinating.
Yeah.
But anyways, there we are.
All right. I think that is.
How long have we been on?
Like 40 minutes.
Oh, that's not that long. We could do one more question. That
All
way
right.
we get to an hour. So
All right.
we need one more
I'll
question.
spin.
Hopefully this spinner doesn't pick something that's like too complicated. I mean, none
If
of
it
these
does,
were
we can just-
complicated. We make everything complicated.
Don't we though?
All right. What is a funny story your family tells about you that you'd like to share?
Oh, a funny story about me. I think most of my stories have kind of been told. A funny story about me. I can think of one about my brothers. I don't know. I don't know that there are a whole bunch of funny stories from when I was little. There are stories that they told about me, like that they were like, "Oh, you could tell Rivka was protective from a very early age for this reason or that reason." There's a lot of stories that talk about. No, I don't know that that anyone thought, "Oh, I got one. I just got it." You tell it. What about you?
I don't know. I just don't know.
Oh,
Either.
'cause
I
we've
mean,
told a lot of
the
them as
stories,
well.
you know, that of course, I always think of stories that my mom would tell. You know, little things from when I was little.
Like, yeah.
You know, like when you know, I remember this. I remember we lived in Connecticut, and I was playing. We lived in a condominium complex, and it was sort of shaped like a U, and it was on a hill, and so I was down in the middle of the U, kind of guarded in the U, and playing on the hill and playing with my friends. And I'm 3 years old, and apparently I was having so much fun that I did not want to come in and use the bathroom.
I still just can't believe that a 3-year-old was out there playing unsupervised with the friends.
Yeah.
I just, you know.
Well, it was the 70s.
It was the 70s. That's amazing.
And
to
so
me.
I go inside, and my mom, you know, I had a quote unquote accident, but I was old enough to not be having accidents, and so I was in trouble. But she just wanted to threaten me, and she said to me, she goes, "You see that paddle on that wall there?" And I looked at it, and she goes, "Well, if next time you do this, that paddle's gonna fly." And I remember thinking, that doesn't make any sense. But thinking, I should say, like, there was something I wanted to say, but I think I was bright enough to know I needed to get out of reach of my mother. So I run to the top of the stairs, and I turn around, and I went, Mommy. And she went, "What?" And I went, "Ha, paddles don't fly." And she goes, "Well, that one's going to." And of course, it didn't fly.
So from a very early age, you had quite the smart mouth.
Oh, yeah, I got into
That's
a
like
lot
Antonio.
of trouble
Not
all
trying to
the
bring
way.
you into the sun, but
I got, that was what I got in trouble for, was always having to have some little smart aleck remark thinking I was funny. You know,
Yeah.
all the way through, I got paddled a lot in school not because of grades, but because of
your mouth.
my mouth, because I would just talk back, and it didn't make, you know, I remember having this experience where adults would, you know, they would I would genuinely get confused sometimes, because they would say, answer me when I'm talking to you, and then I would answer something, and they would say, "Don't talk back to me," but I didn't realize I was being if my answer was sarcastic, that was me talking back to them. And so I was like, "But you just told me to answer you, and now you tell me not to talk back. Make up your mind." And those were, yeah. So I had a smart mouth. So that's something my mom used to tell that little story from when I was 3 years old that she thought was funny.
Yeah. Your mom was great with stories.
Yeah.
She was. She had a lot of stories.
I mean, the one I can remember was sitting at the kitchen table, and I was 8 years old, and I said something sarcastic, something disrespectful or whatever, and my dad had enough. So my dad went to undo his belt, you know, and so neither of my parents could run very fast. So
What?
so I got up and bolted to my bedroom, and I climbed out. I locked my bedroom door. I climbed out my window, and I went into the backyard, and I hid behind this massive bush. Now we lived in a group of houses that were, my dad was a prison chaplain, and so we lived right by the prison. You could see the prison from our home, and there was a block of houses for employees there and everything. So my parents went and began looking for me once they got into my room. They saw I'd climbed out the window, so they drove all around the block, and it was starting to get dark, and they're really, my mom's just a wreck. She's crying. And so then they come
Your
back
mom
to the
was
house.
easy.
She was, I know, right?
My gosh.
So they come back to the house, and I kind of peek around. I see that my dad's coming into the backyard, and he's coming toward the bush, and they'd been looking for me for over an hour. And so he's coming toward the bush, and I thought, okay, here's what I'm going to do. As he comes to the bush, I'm going to go around. Like when he comes to the back, I'll go around and come back, and he'll never know that I was here. And I didn't anticipate that my mom would be standing over there. And so as I kind of snuck around to the other side of the bush, my mom, she goes, because my first name is Johnny, and she's like, Johnny! And my dad, with his thick accent and fury in his voice, goes, Johnny! And I went, Mommy! And I ran to my mom, and she was so relieved that I was okay.
Yeah. Because that in that 1 hour of time, even though her 3-year-old was able to play outside unsupervised,
we were by the prison
with
now.
friends.
Yeah.
You were by the prison, so the bad people are all locked up.
Yeah.
And there's nothing going to happen to
I
you. They're
know.
looking for you for an hour. You're a smart kid. You know not to go get lost.
Right.
The alligators are not going to kill you.
I went in the backyard.
But yeah, you knew how to do it, man. Good
Oh,
for you.
man.
Good for you. I think of one of the earliest stories that was told to me about me, going back to actually my great grandparents. So,
I love this.
so my great grandmother was my great grandfather. They got married real young. Of course, everybody did back then. And he was a very, very strong man. He wasn't tall or anything, but he was so strong because he had all sorts of jobs, whether it was shoveling coal on trains, or he was always working hard laborious jobs. He helped build the
Hoover Dam.
The Hoover Dam. He helped build another dam. Like it was during those years where they lived in like tent communities,
Right.
because they would travel around and doing things. So
Didn't your dad describe him as someone was a hobo, he said.
that was his other grandfather.
Ah.
My grandmother's father was a hobo.
I got it.
And so he anyways, he was a real mean guy. Like real mean, real gruff, very belligerent. And if you know his history and how he grew up and how he was treated and stuff like that, that's not
Surprising.
That's not surprising. That's what happens when people are treated that way. So anyways, he marries Irma. His name was, what was his name? I keep forgetting. It's not Stanley. I think Stanley was my grandfather's middle name.
I don't remember.
Was his first name Joseph? No, that was your
I just wrote it
grandfather.
down the other night, but I don't recall it.
All right. Well, you can tell me in a second then, like tell everybody in a second. Anyway, so she was a very, very strong woman. And I don't know, she might have been taller than him. I don't remember the exact, but they were at least the same height because she wasn't a small woman. She was taller and she was bigger boned, and she was just, a very stocky, tall woman.
Okay.
Anyway, so as the years went by, like all the family stories, until my great grandfather got saved and he became this very sweet, kind man, all the stories about them are pretty rough. Like the stories of where it was during the Depression, and my great grandmother had an orange that she was going to give to the baby, and somebody ate the orange, and they had 6 kids, and somebody ate the orange, and she was like, who ate the orange? And of course, none of the kids would fess up. So she mixed up a concoction to make them all drink so that they would all throw up. And then whoever had eaten the orange was going to be punished. Personally, I think just having to drink something that disgusting to make me grow up
It was already punishment.
Was a bit, but not to them.
Well, they all got that punishment, right? They all had to drink the stuff.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So, and not all of them were guilty.
Right.
So I feel like that's a big punishment for everybody. Anyway, so she was a very tough, strong woman, just said it how it was and was unapologetic. So I'm like 18 months old. And apparently I didn't even start walking until I was 18 months. And a lot of people might be like, you didn't start walking until you were 18 months. Well, I was born after 7 years of no kids, and they'd been praying and praying and praying
miscarriages
for a baby,
and
lots of miscarriages. So by the time I was born, they didn't want to put me down, you know, like
Right.
It wasn't like I was just left on my own by the time you have like 2 and 3 and 4 kids. So I started walking at 18 months, and so I was walking, and my great grandparents came over to visit. And at this point, my great grandmother is a large woman. And so they said she couldn't get around very well. She had a cane and stuff like that. So she was sitting in this, it wasn't a recliner, but it looked like a recliner. We actually grew up with this chair. It was burnt orange, and it rocked. It was like a rocking recliner looking thing, but it didn't recline.
Okay.
Anyway, so she was sitting in that chair, and my parents are sitting there, and my great granddad is sitting there, and they're all talking, and my great grandmother is sitting in the chair, and I walk over to her, and I just kick her as hard as I can in the shin, and she's like, Rivka, she's like, stop that. And they said I just kind of looked at her and kind of cocked my head a little bit, and like I kicked her again, and she was like, Rivka, no ma'am, do not kick me. And they said I just began to walk around the recliner. I'd get right back to her, and I'd kick her again. And I'd walk around the recliner, and I'd just kick her again, because clearly she was not going to be able to get up and do anything. I don't know if I thought it was funny because she was so mad at me, but my parents sat there and thought it was quite comical.
Yeah, the laugh.
But my
if
dad
they were
said,
laughing,
yeah,
it probably.
they said
you were
I
like,
just
oh,
would walk
this is
around,
good.
I just kick her again, and my dad would say, he's like, so you could see the old generation, like the matriarch that goes way back,
Yeah.
and the new generation who's like 18 months old,
equally strong.
strong, just like butting heads right there.
Right.
So
yeah.
that to me is a
That's a
funny story.
Yeah, that's cute.
That's a funny
That's
story.
Cute.
So
All right. Well, I think that's
yeah,
that's
good for this podcast.
That's a good point for us to wrap it up. All right, everybody. Well, I hope you have enjoy.
Stay warm if you don't live in Arizona.
It's a little chilly in Arizona too.
Well, for Arizona people, sure.
Of course it is. So stay warm. Enjoy.
I'm sorry. I don't know how that happened, but my phone just asked everybody, where does the bathroom in Greek? Sorry.
All right. Well, may the
Bye.
Lord bless you and keep you, and may the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a beautiful day.